There is something we've all been told since we were young, a belief that doesn't help us at all, but only make our lives harder. And that belief is, if you've been investing a lot of effort and not seeing the result you want, it must be because you are not working hard enough. But the truth is, this belief was never really true. Shocking, right? I know, but this can be explained, and I will explain why later. So in this video, not only that, I will share with you why this belief is not true, so you can finally stop pushing through the hard way when it doesn't actually work, which means you can have an easier life. And on top of that, I will share 5 practical tips that you can start using today to achieve your goals with more ease and to make your life much more enjoyable. We always thought that the relationship between effort and reward is proportional. If we work harder, we will get better results. If we love harder, we will receive more love. If we exercise more, we will get fitter. But this isn't always true. Have you ever heard of the law of diminishing return and even negative return? Diminishing return means that after passing a certain point, each input will actually produce less output. And negative return means that after passing that point, and when you add more input, it will actually make the total output worse. For example, imagine an office where the boss hires more people. At first, the productivity increases because there are more people to do the work. But after a certain point, there actually aren't enough projects to go around. So even if the boss hires extra employee, the output of each employee will decrease. And then when he continues to hire more and more employees, the office becomes so crowded. There are more communication lines and there are more chances for miscommunication. People actually start getting in each other's way, and that will cause the overall output to fall. And that is the diminishing return and the negative return. It is same with work. When you overexerted, when you are already tired and still trying to work harder, it doesn't matter how many hours you sit in front at your desk, forcing yourself to push harder, deliver some works. You will either produce nothing at all, or worse, you will produce something that is worse than your normal standard. That is why when you're not seeing the progress, the answer isn't always push harder. On the other hand, think about the times where you have produced the best work. Weren't those moments when the process become very enjoyable, sometimes maybe become effortless, and you are in the flow state, you are in the zone, and you are performing at your peak? So in the second part of the video, I'm going to share 5 actionable tips with you so that you can take action with more ease. By the way, this video is a part 2 of a 3-part series on the book called Effortless. The first part was all about Effortless State, tips that help you to feel physically rest, emotionally unburdened, and mentally energized so that you will feel lighter to do the hard work. If you haven't watched that yet, I will link it in here and also in the description. So with that in mind, let's jump to the first point of Effortless Action. Have you ever worked on something for a whole day, and by the end of the day, instead of feeling accomplished, you don't feel like you have made much progress? And I would like to invite you to think back to those moments where you're not entirely sure what the finished product should look like. You kind of knew, but not 100%. Maybe you know that you need to write a report, but you are unsure what is this report about, how many sections do you need, what contents do you need, and what is the purpose of this report. Maybe you have to build a website, and again, you are not sure what should you include in the website. And when you are actually working on the task, deep down, you start asking yourself, what does done even mean in this task? When should I stop working on this task? And you are absolutely right to question yourself, because you simply can't finish something that without a clearly defined endpoint. You can spend hours on it, but if you don't know what finish look like, chances are you will either end up doing a lot of work that is not actually contributing to the end result, or you will still feel uneasy after getting something done because you are not sure that if the things that you are doing are actually pointing to the right directions. Either way, it will leave you feel stressed and feel very difficult to work on the task. And that's why if you want the progress to feel easier, the first step is to define what done look like to you for the task. You've probably heard of this advice before, and you also probably try to define a clear end point to your task, but you're still feeling the task is difficult and hard, and you are wondering wondering what's the problem. To understand what is the problem, I would like to invite you to ask yourself, with the task that you have in hand right now, can you clearly explain what complete actually looks like to you for the task? For example, if you're writing a report, how many sections do you need? How many pages? What are each section about? If you are cold calling customers, how many customers do you need to call, and what is the purpose of the call? What is the end result of the call? If you are analyzing some kind of document, what does done mean? Does it mean just reviewing the documents, or does it mean on top of that you need to write a conclusions after your analysis? The author also suggests something that I really like is, once you have defined what done look like to you, close your eyes and take 1 minute to visualize it. Visualize yourself to complete the task. Visualization has already been proved to boost goal achievement. So for example, if your task is to finish a report, close your eyes and imagine yourself that you are scrolling through a Word document with 8 sessions, with 20 pages, and then it's full of words, full of content. Clicking save and turn off your laptop. Feel the feeling of you feel accomplished after doing it, and this will greatly increase the chance for you to finish the task with ease. And right now, here's the part that I found that is most inspiring, because that's not something that I have heard of in the productivity space. Like a lot of people, I used to keep a never-ending to-do list, overwhelming to-do list, and even when I managed to check everything off, by the end of the day, I don't really feel like I have accomplished a lot, because deep down I know that the tasks on my to-do list don't really move me closer to my goals. So instead of a to-do list, the author suggests that you can have a done for the day list. Done for the day list is not same as a to-do list. It is not something that you should do today. It is about the tasks that if you finish them today, it would make the day feel meaningful and worthwhile. And most importantly, these are the tasks that will help you make great progress towards your goal. So I think this is a great solution for people who actually have a long to-do list but still feel like life isn't moving forward. You don't need to do more. You just need to do what matters the most. So after writing the done for the day list, ask yourself, if I complete everything on this list today, will I feel satisfied by the end of the day? Or if there are some important tasks that if I left undone, it will haunt me tonight. Have you ever heard of the term MVP, minimum viable product? This is a term that in business world, it basically means that the simplest version of your product. It means that the minimum requirement for it to be useful, and then it can always be improved later. So the author takes this same concept and apply it to the productivity space, and he called that minimum viable action. In other words, is you don't actually need to figure out the whole project. You just need to identify the very first step you take and just take the action. You may think that this point is contrary to the first point that I've mentioned, which is about defining what done looks like, so that you think you need to know all the steps before you start doing a task. And not really, it doesn't contradict with each other, because when you are pursuing something big in your life, something that you've never done before, you will not 100% sure what does it look like, what are the steps that take you there. Defining what complete looks like doesn't always mean the whole picture. It can simply mean what does done actually look like for this task, and in this point it just means the very first step that you need to take. And again, you probably heard of this advice as well, and it doesn't work for you. It still feels hard to start doing the task, because the step that you think it is the first step is actually not the first step. Let me share you a story to explain. A woman wants help to declutter her office, so a productivity coach asked her, if I brought you my computer right now, will you be able to order a bookshelf? And she replied, well, I would like to, but first I need to measure my office wall first to see what size to order. And then he said, okay, can you go right now and measure it for me? She laughed and admitted, and she said, actually I can't, because I don't know where my tape measure is. At this point, both laugh because they both realize she hasn't made any progress. It's not because ordering a bookshelf is too hard. It wasn't even about measuring the wall. It's just because she didn't have a measuring tape at the moment. The real first step was much simpler. Find, borrow, or buy a tape measure. And that's the point. We often get overwhelmed because we misjudge what you think is the first step. It's actually 3 or 4 steps bundled together. But once you break it down into a single obvious physical action, it suddenly feels effortless. The first step may feel so trivial that you don't want to name it, but more often or not, something as small as buying a tape measure is exactly what gives you the momentum to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next. I've actually noticed that in my own life too. Sometimes I resist doing something that is very simple, like just attending the meeting. Not because the meeting itself is really hard, it's because I haven't brushed my hair yet. I haven't put on my lipstick, so I don't want to attend my meeting. If I have brushed my hair, if I have just put on a lipstick, I can easily click the join button to attend the meeting. The resistance is never really about the task. It's always about the tiny, obvious first step. Have you ever feel like you are doing way too much just to get one task done, and you would like a solution to solve this problem? Back when I was working as a quantity surveyor in Hong Kong, one of my duties was to calculate the payment that developers owe to the contractor, which basically their salaries. And our companies use Excel for calculations, which makes sense. But there was one policy. Until now, I still don't think that it makes sense at all. The policy requires us to check the formula to make sure everything adds up correctly. Fair enough, I'm fine with that. But then came the part that make no sense at all. So we have to print the documents. After printing the entire document, we actually had to manually check the calculations one by one. So if the cost for a worker is £70 per day and the number of days that he worked was 22, not only did we have to check if the formula was multiplying by the right cell in the Excel file, but we also had to pull out a calculator and then reduce 70 times 22 by hand. I'm not talking about just a few pages, because to build a building, there are more than 1,000 items. We are talking about 60 plus pages long of payment. We have to calculate by hand. It's because the company doesn't trust the computer. It really blew my mind that such a big company thought this is the right step to do. No wonder life feels so hard when we make work harder than it is. So that's bring me to the next point. Simplify. When you do the task, what are the absolute minimum steps required for the completion? What are the absolute minimum steps to take me to there from here? I know that some people will argue that, okay, if you simplifying, which means that you're lowering your quality. But no, unnecessary steps are just unnecessary. You don't need them to complete the task. You can complete a task without them, absolutely. So cutting them allows you to pull your full energy into what actually matters. There's also another way to simplify, and that is not everything you do have to go the extra mile. I learned about this in a hard way. It's amazing that if you always want to do your best, that's a strength. But to make sure that your efforts actually move you forward and make your life easier, you have to realize not every single task deserves your best energy. Some things just don't matter enough to spend hours perfecting it. For example, I used to be really stubborn about formatting. Fonts, color, headings, page breaks, everything need to be perfect before I issue it to my clients. But here's the reality, not all documents are created equal. Some are just for record keeping, and the clients don't actually care how pretty they look unless it was ugly. It was too ugly, and yet I would still waste an hour to formatting something that just doesn't really matter. But don't get me wrong, if you have time, by all means you can do it perfectly. Actually, I don't really recommend to. If you have time, maybe you should take more rest instead of trying to perfecting everything else. So anyway, if your plate is already full and you can barely breathe, you feel like you have so much to do, you need to ask yourself, where am I going the extra mile when I really don't need to? Maybe you're spending too much time perfecting a task that your clients really don't care about, or maybe you're pushing yourself to be the perfect friend for everyone when you don't really have enough time to take care of yourself. Choose wisely where you go extra mile to. Not every step or task needs it, and pushing too hard on everything will just makes your life feels much harder than they need to be. We all start out ugly. Every one of Pixar's stories start that way. Have you ever caught yourself trying to picture the perfect version of your work before you even start, and then you end up just sitting at your desk feeling stuck and almost in pain to start the task? For me, when I was writing my script, before I typed the first sentence, I used to stress over every single detail. I need to make sure there's no grammar mistake, the flow was right, the wording I used was perfect, and the tone is matched. And that's exactly why I felt so much resistant to start doing something. I was putting way too much pressure on myself. It almost felt like I was back in the ancient time where I need to craft the words into the stone, and once it is written, you can't erase it. So because of that, I thought that everything, it has to be perfect from the very beginning. But then the following approach has changed the game. So if you feel resistant to starting because you're trying to get it right from the very first moment, you need to try this approach, and this approach is called the zero draft approach. What does that mean? It means that write a version so rough that it doesn't even count as a draft. Just start. Build a rough version of your website, build a rough version of your product. Just start. It doesn't have to be good yet, it doesn't have to be ready yet. This works because it completely takes the pressure off. You are not aiming for the perfect, you are not aiming for draft worthy, and you don't even have to show anyone about that draft, that zero draft as well. You're just simply giving yourself the permission to start doing something. And once I start to apply this tip, I feel like everything just feels so much easier and lighter. Before, when I first started to write my script, I need to sit in front of my desk for like 30 minutes to write the first sentence. But right now I can start writing within the 5 minutes, and then after finishing the whole thing, I will be able to go back, polish, tweaking, whatever, to make sure it looks good. So the zero draft approach really saved me from procrastination. It turned that uphill into something that is much lighter, because I no longer expect myself to create something that is high quality right away. So whatever you are working on, just start, and remember, start ugly. Give yourself the permission to create a zero draft approach. You will find it much easier and more effortless to begin. Have you ever started a project where at first you were either really excited about it or stressed over about it? So you work on it day and night, thought about it constantly, felt completely upset with it, and then you have made so much progress in the beginning. But then after powering through a period of time, you start to feel tired, and suddenly the project wasn't as exciting, your motivation dropped, and eventually you might even abandon the very thing you want the most at the start. When you're experiencing this, it isn't because you're lazy, it's because you are exhausted. You have overworked yourself, and that's why the authors talk about importance of pacing. The idea isn't to work too much or work too little, but to find the rhythm that keeps you moving forward without burning out. To do this, he suggests to create an upper and lower bound. The upper bound is the maximum time you allow yourself to do the project on that day, and the lower bound means the minimum time you commit to the project each day, because this way you don't overwork yourself to a point of exhaustion, but you also don't skip days that will make you feel guilty for doing nothing. You are always moving forward steadily and sustainably. But to be honest, I don't completely agree with this approach. Some of my favorite YouTubers and even the classic book Think and Grow Rich has mentioned a point that they argue that many successful people went through periods of obsession about something. They worked extremely hard, sometimes even to an unhealthy level, but that's what allowed them to grow quickly, to learn faster, and to achieve results faster. Which one is right? The steady pacing approach or the obsession approach if you want to achieve your goal effortlessly? I honestly think that both are actually valid, because one key element of effortless actions in my point of view is enjoyment. I think when you enjoy something, it is effortless to me. And you can't truly obsess with something that you don't really like. When you obsess with something, it will be something that you like and you enjoy to do it. So in that sense, I think obsession can actually be part of the effortless action. Being obsessed with something helps you improve quickly because drilling on it every single day builds the momentum and it gives you the joy of fast progress. The joy alone can push you to keep going, but obsession has its limits. You also need to pay attention to the signal that your body is sending you. If you start feeling tired, if you start feeling mentally drained, exhausted, and if you start feeling stuck and unmotivated, I think this is a signal from your mind and from your body telling you that the obsession approach is not suitable for you at this moment. Maybe you have to change to the lower and upper bound approach. At this time, when you use the lower and upper bound approach, it can help you recharge, but at the same time also keeping the momentum. You are not demanding yourself too much, and at the same time you are not doing too less. So here's my takeaway. It's okay to be obsessed with your goal, but don't ignore your pacing. You need to stay aware when the joys start fading, and that is the time that you need to slow down, restore your energy, and use the pacing, use the upper and lower bound tool to help you keep moving forward without burning out. In that way, you can keep making progress effortlessly and enjoyable. If you are watching this series, I know that you're someone who takes yourself very seriously and you work really hard in your life, and that is something that you should be truly proud of. But hard work doesn't always pay off, and the good news is it doesn't always have to be difficult. You can make progress easier by defining what's done look like, taking the most obvious first step, adopting the zero draft approach, letting go of perfection to start, and keeping the right pace. So thank you so much for watching till the end. If you missed the first episode, again, you can watch it in here, and in the next video I will show you how to reap the benefits again and again without putting much extra effort, and I will see you there. Bye.